of the problems in these standards that you have and that are going to be there regardless of whatever kinds of guidance your very hard-working Department of Education tries to provide as materials and resources to your teachers. First of all, most of Common Core's standards are content-free skills. They contain no guidelines for the most part. There are only a few standards that do, and I'll read off one or two of them. I have to put them in there because I was asked to contribute them, so I know what they are by heart. But most of them are content-free skills. Skills such as, and I'm going to read one that I don't particularly like to read, but it probably gives a good example of the problem that is faced by both assessors, makes it easier for them in a sense, they have nothing much to stick to, and teachers. Analyze how and why individuals, events, and ideas develop and interact over the course of the text. I'll read it again. Analyze, this is a reading standard. This is one of the anchor reading standards. Analyze how and why individuals, events, and ideas develop and interact over the course of the text. No one really understands what that means, so for the next 12 grades, we get supposedly greater specificity of what that standard means at grade level. Let me read you the 12th grade level version of that anchor standard, just so you get a sense of the writing quality of the standards. This is the grade level 11 and 12 version of that anchor standard. Analyze a complex set of ideas or sequence of events and explain how specific individuals' ideas or events interact and develop over the course of the text. Is that clear? I don't mean to be sarcastic, but it's one of the things that I fought against and made sure that when in Massachusetts we wrote standards, they had to be clear to ordinary people, they had to be clear to teachers, and people had to know what they meant simply by being able to read well-written English prose. So we have content-free skills that in some cases are not easily interpretable and will be interpreted by test developers in only ways that they may understand. Whether they will be the same across all test developers remains to be seen. This is a work in progress. We don't know. We haven't seen the final results. We don't even know where the cut scores are going to be on these tests that are being developed for college grades. But that is something that needs to be kept in mind. That is why it's very difficult to answer some questions about what do these standards really mean in the classroom when we don't know what the tests look like yet or what the cut score is.
We're going to be in this concrete operational period where that is like fabulous for them. Practicing math facts is right up their alley. They love to do concrete operations. What distinguishes this from the next one, called formal operational period, is that they can't yet think abstractly. They are beginning it towards the end of the concrete period, but they're really not able to think abstractly until the formal operational period, which is 11 to 12. This is why when you try to bring algebra down and down and down and down, you sort of hit a wall around 5th, 6th grade. That you can introduce pre-algebra concepts around 6th grade and they sort of get it. They get it even easier at 7th grade, even easier in 8th grade. And that's because their brain is maturing and then they're now able to think abstractly.
Kind of person we are going to be privileged to hear tonight. He has been involved in virtually every step of setting the national standards, and he doesn't have a single credential for it. He's never taught in an elementary school, I think. I actually don't know. He's never edited a scholarly journal, but I think he has written scholarly papers. And a variety of other things that everybody here has done some of. He hasn't done. You told me you didn't want to do a standard. So he hasn't done the standard things, and now he's going to tell you what he has done, or what he probably will say he has not done, others have done, but which he has helped others to want to do and to actually do. And we're all going to be living with the fruits of that for the next 5 years. So listen carefully.
In, but I'm just going to say one word about my own organization, which is Student Achievement Partners. Student Achievement Partners, all you need to know about us are a couple things. One is we're composed of that collection of unqualified people who were involved in developing the common standards. And our only qualification was our attention to and command of the evidence behind them. Three principles. And now let's get to what do I mean tonight about what you should be doing over the next 2 years regarding the standards. Let's start with math and then do literacy. I'll probably spend a little more time on literacy because as weak as my qualifications are there, in math they are even more desperate in their lacking.
So those were our three principles, and armed with those three principles, we got set to drafting under the auspices of the National Governors Association and the Council of Chief State School Officers. So again, the principles are evidence of college and career readiness, focus, and local flexibility. So when I say we, what do I mean by we? So there was a small team of us, 3 in English language arts, literacy, 3 in math, that were charged with working on the drafts and making sure that as there was reviews and revisions from folks across the country that we managed that process. But we were supported by a team, each one of us, in English, Language Arts, and Math by about 40 experts. And it was a cross-section of people. So we had researchers, we had college faculty, we had state educators in English, Language, Arts, Literacy, we had librarians, and we had both of the teams in both English, Language, Arts, and Literacy were anchored by K-12 teachers, most of whom were recommended by the AFT and the NEA. And then, to our surprise, 48 states stepped up and said, well, we want to be part of the development process as well. We didn't know we'd get as many states. And in order to be part of the development process, they needed to put state teams together of teachers and some college faculty. And of course, the AFT and the NEA, the National Council of Teachers of English, NCTM teachers, the math teachers as well, also wanted to be part of the development process. Well, this was September 2009, right? They told us that we had to have a draft ready by November 2009. So I don't know any of you have written standards, but that's fast. And to give it to the nation, right? Well, so we did. And the only thing I can tell you is that the standards hit with a thud because we had tried some new things. And in the meantime of trying some new things, we had managed to put together a bulky, cumbersome, where are the standards document. We had these layers, we had headings and subheadings and standards and objectives and you name it. And then when you got down to where it was what students were supposed to learn, we had the brilliant idea of putting together paragraphs, narrative descriptions of what that looked like. And to top it all off, we put them in grade bands. So there was like grades 2-3, grades 4-5, grades 6-8. Well, did we hear it? We heard it from the teachers across the nation that essentially told us, go back to the drawing board. We need you to clarify. We need you to streamline. We need you to simplify. And they said, and by the way, get rid of the layers. And those paragraphs gotta go. Give us some standard statements, some clear ones that we can respond to. And then we heard from teachers who said, make them grade specific. Because I can remember a 6th grade teacher saying to me, you know, you give us this batch of standards for 6-8, what part is mine? Is it all of it? What part does a 7th grade teacher do? And so we went back to the drawing board just as they asked. Now here what was really interesting and powerful for me is that as bulky as the document was, the teachers around the nation also gave us advice about 2 critical components they wanted us to retain so they could sort of see what was good in it. And they said there were 2 of them. One was text complexity, because we know how consequential that is to students. They had seen the research. They cared about the research. They said, so whatever you do in the next draft, retain that. And by the way, retain the fact that you're not just focusing on English language arts, but you're also focusing on literacy. So we did. And then the teachers worked with us from around the country. We had these regular intervals where we were hearing lots from teachers from January all the way to June. So I just want to give you just a sprinkling, 2 or 3 examples of
that I believe we have on this.
Thank you.
The definition of college readiness, I think it's a fair critique that it's a minimal definition of college readiness.
For some colleges.
Well, for the colleges most kids go to, but not that most parents probably aspire, right?
It's not for STEM. It's not for international.
That's true. It's not only not for STEM. It's also
easy.
not for selective colleges that, for example, UC Berkeley, even whether you're going to be an engineer or not, you better have pre-calculus to get into UC Berkeley. But we have to think about
engineering colleges.
And that's
scientific.
That's true. I think the third pathway goes a lot towards that. But your issue is really broader than that.
Oh yes.
So I just wanted to make sure that we got that out.
I'm not just thinking of selective colleges. There's a much broader question here.
That's right. It's both, I think, in the sense of being clear about what this college readiness does and doesn't get you, and that's the big subject.
But not to call something college ready when it only applies to a certain kind of college and a certain lower level of mathematical expertise.
that won't buy you far on the international market in most major disciplines of technology, economics, business, and so on.
Okay, thank you. That's fair.
kinds of data? Well, the National Education Data Model, which is connected with the U.S. Department of Education, recommends, it doesn't require yet, but it recommends compiling over 400 data points on each child. And these are just some of them. And it goes on and on and on, because the idea is to know everything that there is to know about a child, because it's for his own good. And you can help with the education. You can, if you know every little problem he's having in every conceivable area of his life, then you can focus that and you can educate him better that way. In my view, I don't care if they can focus it better. They don't have the right to know either stuff about my child. But the people in charge think that this is a great idea. And they say, don't worry, and they say this in the P20 WIN thing from Connecticut, don't worry, it'll all be anonymized. We'll just give, it's called a unique student identifier. Every time I say that to a group and there are any IT people in the audience, they laugh. Because when you've got that many data points, or even a lot fewer data points, you can match it. You can data match. And this has been going on for years. In Kentucky, 20 years ago, somebody was doing a study, and they data matched and figured out who every child was on this particular testing regimen without knowing very little. I think they knew 3 data points or something. And they matched it with 100% accuracy. So imagine what you can do with 400. And so everybody who knows anything about anonymization says, it doesn't matter if it's anonymized. If you don't want it being shared, you don't want them to identify your child, don't give it to them.
But it also adapts. That means that a student who's doing really well on the test will see somewhat harder items, and a student who's struggling will see somewhat easier items. One of the questions we get a lot from our state clients is, how can it be fair if Kid A is getting a hard test and Kid B is getting an easy test. And as you all know, we use item response theory to put the test items, these little blue lines are test items, and the students, these little green lines are students, all on the same scale. So here's a hypothetical kid who gets a bunch of really easy items, gets about half of them right. Another kid who's doing really well gets a bunch of hard items, gets about half of them right. And you see that the kid is going to get a lower score because the score is not just the number of items you get right. It also depends on how hard those items were. So you can give a fair test that actually changes difficulty. This was a big stumbling block for a lot of folks who are used to traditional fixed form tests. What we have here is we have students' ability over here, students' proficiency on the x-axis. Your y-axis is the standard error of the test. We have two tests here. One is a paper and pencil fixed form version, that's your blue line. An adaptive version of the same test was given, that's your red line. But the real advantage of an adaptive test is not that you're getting a smaller standard error, is that you're getting a small standard error for a greater range of students. You see it in this particular test more extremely on the high end of the test. So you get better measurement for a broader group of kids. It's one of the things that disability advocates really resonated with me. Oh, so you get better measurement for my kids. Computer adaptive testing is not one thing, it's many things. There are different approaches and they have very, very different implications for education. Some adaptive testing approaches really do risk disadvantaging lower achieving students. And the way they do it is by, the way that disadvantage comes about is these kids see only the easiest items. To the extent that the easiest items are also the least complex, the recognition, recognize this fact, recall that operation. To the extent that they're those really simple items, these kids are not given an opportunity to show their problem-solving skills. Okay, maybe I can't add and subtract, but I can figure out a problem. So the goal is to test every kid on the full range of the curriculum while adapting the difficulty without dropping the cognitive complexity down. And teachers know, I know this kid's struggling, but I also know he's only going to get tested on addition and subtraction. That's all I'm going to teach him. So So you have an impact in the classroom. Our standards-based approach makes sure that every kid sees a full range of content, full range of depth of knowledge. The standards-based adaptation it's important to do it that way because it preserves the validity of the test for accountability purposes. When you're using a test for accountability, you're not really using it to measure the kid, you're using it to measure the school or the teacher or the district. And you want that school or teacher or district to have an incentive to teach the full range of curriculum. You have a set of content standards, that's the stuff they're supposed to teach. You want them to teach the stuff, so you got to measure the stuff. And this makes sure that every kid is going to be measured on the full range of stuff, and they can be really quite sure that every benchmark is going to be tested with some student in their classrooms.
Is that these standards are worthy of nothing if the assessments built on them are not worthy of teaching to. Period. This is quite a demanding charge, I might add to you, because it has within it the kind of statement, you know, oh, the standards were just fine, but the real work begins now in defining the assessment, which, if you were involved in the standards, is a slightly exhausting statement to make. But let's be rather clear. We're at the start of something here, and its promise, our top priority as an organization, I'll tell you a little bit more about our organization, is to do our darndest to ensure that the assessment is worthy of your time, is worthy of imitation. It was Lauren who propounded the great rule that I think is a statement of reality, though not a pretty one, which is teachers will teach towards the test. There is no force strong enough on this earth to prevent that. There's no amount of hand-waving. There's no amount of saying they teach to the standards, not the test. We don't do that here, whatever. The truth is And if I misrepresent you, you are welcome to take the mic back. But the truth is, teachers do. Tests exert an enormous effect on instructional practice, direct and indirect. And it's hence our obligation to make tests that are worthy of that kind of attention. It is, in my judgment, the single most important work we have to do over the next 2 years to ensure that that is so. Period. So when you ask me, what do we have to do over the next 2 years? We got to do that. If we do anything else over the next 2 years and don't do that, we are stupid and shall be betrayed again by shallow tests that demean the quality of classroom practice. Period.